Good morning, beautiful people. Welcome to the Dewey Show. I'm happy that you're listening today. Today I wanted to try something new. I want to put my words into an AI thing's mouth because I understand that I have a really hard time holding my train of thought and, stuttering, and I don't want that. So that's what I'm going to try today. If you like it, please let me know. If you don't, please let me know. It's just something I want to try. Before we get into the episode about Japanese internment camps, something that was a fascist ideology in America, something that I failed to talk about when I was talking about former and future and current threats of fascism in the U.S. So we'll get to that, but first I'd like to thank AdamMail.com for sponsoring today's show. AdamMail.com has literally thousands of items that will make you and your partner's sex life so much better. They have sex toys, condoms, lubricants, dildos, DVDs, lubricants. They have anything you could possibly think of at AdamMail.com. And the best part of this is they're giving you folks, Dewey Show listeners, 50% off of almost any one item, as well as free and always discreet shipping. Head over to AdamMail.com, that is ADAMMALE.com, and use the offer code DEWEY at checkout, that is DEWEY at checkout. Like everything else that is talked about today, this link and offer code will be in the description of today's show. Now, let's get into this. Let's talk about the Japanese internment camps that happened in America.
December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. The day that lived in infamy. Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor shook the United States, igniting fear and anger across the nation. The surprise military strike by the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service against the naval base at Pearl Harbor in Honolulu, territory of Hawaii, led to the United States' formal entry into World War II the next day. The attack was intended as a preventive action to keep the U.S. Pacific Fleet from interfering with military actions the Empire of Japan was planning in Southeast Asia against overseas territories of the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and the United States. This fear, fueled by wartime propaganda and racial prejudice, quickly turned towards Japanese Americans living on the West Coast. The media played a significant role in spreading fear and suspicion. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, and even Hollywood films depicted Japanese Americans as potential spies and saboteurs. The public, already on edge from the attack, found it easy to believe these portrayals. Despite their loyalty to America, Japanese Americans were seen as potential enemies. Many Japanese Americans had lived in the United States for generations, contributing to the economy and culture. They were farmers, business owners, students, and soldiers. Yet their loyalty was questioned simply because of their ancestry. The government and many citizens could not see past their fear to recognize the contributions and patriotism of Japanese Americans. The government, driven by unfounded suspicions of espionage and sabotage, decided to take drastic measures. Reports of espionage were largely based on rumors and racial prejudice rather than concrete evidence. The FBI and other agencies conducted investigations, but found no significant evidence of espionage among Japanese Americans. Despite this, the pressure to act was immense, and the government felt compelled to take action to reassure the public. On February 19, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. This order gave the military the authority to exclude any persons from designated areas as a security measure. Although the order did not specify any particular group, it was clear that Japanese Americans were the primary targets. The decision was influenced by military leaders, politicians, and public opinion, all of whom believed that removing Japanese Americans from the West Coast was necessary for national security. This order authorized the military to establish exclusion zones along the West Coast. These zones included parts of California, Oregon, Washington, and Arizona. The military was given broad powers to enforce the order, including the ability to arrest and detain anyone who refused to comply. The creation of these zones was justified as a necessary step to protect against potential threats, but it was also a reflection of the deep-seated racial prejudices of the time. These zones, it was decided, would be emptied of anyone deemed a threat to national security, primarily Japanese Americans. The process of removal was swift and often chaotic. Families were given little notice and were forced to leave behind their homes, businesses, and possessions. The government provided limited assistance, and many Japanese Americans had to rely on friends and neighbors to help them store or sell their belongings. Over 120,000 people of Japanese descent, most of them American citizens, were forcibly removed from their homes. They were taken to temporary assembly centers, which were often located in fairgrounds, racetracks, and other makeshift facilities. Conditions in these centers were harsh, with families living in cramped and unsanitary conditions. From there, they were transported to more permanent internment camps located in remote areas of the country. They were given mere days to dispose of their belongings, businesses, and lives as they knew them. Many had to sell their possessions at a fraction of their value or simply abandon them. Businesses that had taken years to build were lost overnight. The financial and emotional toll was immense, and the impact would be felt for generations. The loss of property and livelihood was compounded by the sense of betrayal and injustice that many Japanese Americans felt. The trauma of this forced relocation would forever mark the history of Japanese Americans. The internment experience left deep scars on those who lived through it, affecting their mental and physical health. It also had a lasting impact on the Japanese American community as a whole, shaping their identity and their relationship with the broader American society. The internment is a stark reminder of the dangers of prejudice and the importance of protecting civil liberties, even in times of crisis. Uprooted Lives: The Journey to Uncertainty. The story of Japanese American internment during World War II is one of profound displacement and heart-wrenching uncertainty. It is a chapter in history that saw families torn from their homes, communities, and the lives they had built, thrust into a future that was as unclear as it was daunting. The journey to the internment camps was filled with uncertainty and fear. As families boarded the crowded train cars, their faces were etched with worry and confusion. They were leaving behind everything they knew, venturing into an unknown that was shrouded in fear and anxiety. The train cars, packed to the brim, were not just vehicles of transport, but vessels carrying the weight of countless dreams and hopes, now clouded by an uncertain future. Families were herded onto trains and buses, their final destinations unknown. The process was swift and unrelenting, giving them little time to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. Parents clutched their children tightly, trying to offer comfort in a situation where they themselves felt helpless. The destinations were kept secret, adding to the growing sense of dread and helplessness. Children, confused and scared, clung to their parents, their innocent eyes reflecting the turmoil around them. The young ones, unable to grasp the full extent of the situation, looked to their parents for reassurance. But even the adults, who were supposed to be their pillars of strength, were grappling with their own fears and uncertainties. The journey was not just a physical displacement, but an emotional upheaval that left deep scars on the psyche of those involved. The world outside the train windows was a blur of unfamiliar landscapes. As the train chugged along, the familiar sights of their neighborhoods faded into the distance, replaced by strange and unwelcoming terrains. The landscapes outside the windows were a constant reminder of the unfamiliar and the unknown that lay ahead. Each passing mile took them further away from the life they knew, deepening the sense of loss and disorientation. For many, this was their first time leaving their communities, their homes. The emotional weight of saying goodbye to their homes, friends, and neighbors was immense. These were not just physical spaces, but the very fabric of their lives, woven with memories, relationships, and a sense of belonging. The departure was not just a physical act, but an emotional severance that left them feeling rootless and adrift. The life they knew, the familiar sights, sounds, and smells of their neighborhoods, was gone. The bustling streets, the familiar faces, the comforting routines, all of it was left behind. The neighborhoods that once echoed with the sounds of daily life now stood silent and deserted, a stark reminder of the sudden and forced exodus. The loss was not just of physical space, but of a way of life, a community, and a sense of identity. The camps, hastily constructed in remote areas, awaited their arrival. These were not places designed for living, but makeshift structures erected in isolated and often harsh environments. The remote locations added to the sense of isolation and abandonment. The camps stood as bleak and unwelcoming destinations, far removed from the comfort and familiarity of their homes. Places with names like Manzanar, Tule Lake, and Heart Mountain would become synonymous with confinement and injustice. These names, now etched in history, were once just remote locations. But for the Japanese American families, they became symbols of their suffering, confinement, and the gross injustice they endured. The camps were not just physical spaces, but representations of a dark chapter in history marked by prejudice and fear. These desolate landscapes, far from the comfort of their homes, stood as stark reminders of their sudden displacement. The barren and unwelcoming terrains were a constant reminder of the harsh reality they were forced into. The contrast between the vibrant communities they left behind and the desolate camps they arrived at was a jarring and painful reality. The journey was just the beginning of their ordeal. Arriving at the camps marked the start of a long and arduous period of confinement. The initial shock of displacement was soon replaced by the daily struggles of camp life. The families had to navigate a new reality, one that was fraught with challenges and devoid of the freedoms they once took for granted. Ahead lay years of confinement, uncertainty, and the constant struggle to maintain their dignity and hope in the face of adversity. The camps were places of hardship, but they were also places where the human spirit showed its resilience. Despite the harsh conditions and the constant uncertainty, the families found ways to maintain their dignity and hope. They built communities, supported each other, and held on to the belief that one day they would return to the lives they were forced to leave behind. The journey to uncertainty was a testament to their strength, resilience, and unwavering hope. A nation's fear, the seeds of internment.